The October 14th, 2014 regular meeting of the Mentor Exempted Village Board of Education is called to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Tuttle?
Here.
Mrs. Briner? Recorded absent.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are just going to take just a second to go off script. I wanted to give our condolences from the board and from the administration in honor of Riley Pearson. Riley was a senior at Mentor High School who fought a long, hard-fought battle with cancer, and she passed away on October 5th. So if you could just join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. I want to take another moment just to give a special shout out to our students, particularly those at Mentor High School, for the strength and the courage that they gave Riley and her family over the past 4 years, but particularly the last few months. It was well done, and I don't think a group of adults could have planned anything better to be as supportive as what our students at Mentor High School were for Riley and her family. So those of you watching on TV, but particularly tonight in the audience, thank you for what you did. I know it wasn't easy, but certainly well done. Want to also acknowledge our staff for the work that they did during this very difficult time, because it was really hard on them as well. The family is very appreciative. Mentioned to me both on Sunday during the celebration of life and also at the service yesterday, and in fact the priest gave special mention of that about the students and staff at Mentor High, and I just thought it was important for us to talk about that as we start tonight's meeting off. And it says a lot too about our kids and our community. We had Matt, the ninth grade football player, the other night that was in some dire straits, so to speak. And but you know, things like that aren't measured by a local report card or by trophies on the academic field, but to me they're just as important as those other things. So I think it bears in mind for us to mention, and just want to give special consideration to our kids in the district and to our staff members as well. Thanks for indulging me.
Thank you. I would like to welcome everyone to the October 14th, 2014 regular meeting of the Mentor Exempted Village Board of Education. Prior to this evening, each board member has received for their review and consideration the agenda and materials associated with each agenda item for the board's approval via the district's paperless Board of Education agenda system, Board Docs. The public can access the agenda through the school district's website. The agenda is available through the district's website for public viewing the Sunday prior to the board meeting. Board members have the opportunity to call the superintendent and the chief financial officer for information concerning agenda items and to request, if needed, additional information. There are two places on the agenda when the board entertains comments from the community. The first hearing of the public is dedicated to those who wish to address the board on agenda items only. The second hearing of the public is dedicated to those who wish to address the board on any subject, whether it is an item on the agenda or another issue. When addressing the board, please state your name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please address questions to the president. This meeting is being televised on a delayed basis and will be shown on Time Warner Cable Channel 96.96 in Mentor and Channel 96.22 in Mentor on the Lake. The meeting can also be found on our YouTube channel, Cardinal TV, Mentor, Ohio. Please place your mobile telephones on silent mode during the meeting. Thank you. Mr. Miller? Oh, approval of minutes, please.
So moved.
Any corrections?
Just the one that's noted in the agenda materials.
Okay.
We're aware of.
Second.
Call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Jesling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes. Next on the agenda is the hearing of the public. Oh, yeah, that's right. Hearing of the public, agenda items. Anyone? Thank you. Mr. Miller? Superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. I have the following recommendations listed under the consent agenda, and I recommend approval of consent agenda items 5A1 through 5A5.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments, anyone? Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. President and members of the board, I am very pleased to recognize tonight several of our Mentor High School students who have excelled academically. Mr. Wade, along with Ms. Miller, are going to begin with Nicholas Clark, who received a perfect score on his ACT.
Mr. Vice President, members of the board, Mr. Miller, Mr. Wilson, it is my pleasure to call up Nicholas Clark for earning a perfect score of 36 on the ACT. Nick's perfect score is so rare that the likelihood of doing it is less than 1/10 of 1%. So Nicholas has really established himself as one of our top students, not only at Mentor High School, but across the country. So congratulations, Nicholas.
Next, we are proud to recognize our National Merit semifinalists and commended students.
Congratulations. Wonderful for you.
Don't go too far, Nick. Mr. Vice President, members of the board, Mr. Miller, and Mr. Wilson, the National Merit Scholarship Program is an academic competition for recognition and scholarships that began in 1955. Each year, and tomorrow at Mentor High School, our students will be taking the PSAT. 1.5 million students take the PSAT across the country. The top 50,000 students are recognized as National Merit Scholarship participants. We are lucky to have 2 National Merit semifinalists with us tonight. The 2 National Merit semifinalists are in the top 16,000 students in the country. And our 2 National Merit semifinalists are Nicholas Clark and Victoria Rikacheski. The other students, the other 34,000 remaining students, are recognized as commended students. Though our commended students not continue in the National Merit Competition, they can become candidates for special scholarships sponsored by corporations and businesses. And we'd also like to recognize these students, and if they would come up as we call their name, please. Nicholas Bean. Adrian Miller. And Madison White.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Let's give these 5 students another round of applause, please.
Mr. Wade mentioned testing that we're going to do tomorrow. We made some changes, so I just asked him to spend 30 seconds talking about what change we made.
This year at the high school, we will be having the students take the PSAT in the junior class. We are offering the test to all of our students in the junior class during the school day. It is a very important test for our students to be recognized. We have 5 of them here tonight. We really want to promote the fact that this is a very important test for students, not only to qualify for scholarships, but also helps them in the college placement process. They will take it as juniors. We're also offering it to the sophomores this year, and I'm sure a lot of the students who are here tonight took it as sophomores as well. Because students who take it for 2 years have a greater success rate on the PSAT test, but they also see an increase in average of score of about 200 points on the SAT that they will take in their end of their junior and senior year. And to make sure that our students in our freshman class are moving along that same college and career readiness continuum, we are providing a Ready Step test to all of our freshmen. So the next day tomorrow, we'll be testing approximately 1,800 students at 805 at Mentor High School. So we're hoping logistically it goes off without a hitch. So we're excited to start that program here, and I appreciate the board's support and Mr. Miller's support in allowing us to do that for our students.
Okay. Congratulations to those students. Thank you, Mr. Wade. Mr. President, members of the board, every year we recognize our PTA presidents. We all know the importance of parental involvement. For many, many years, the PTA has given endless hours of service to the students, staff, and community. I've had the privilege and pleasure of speaking at most of the PTAs this year, and I have a few more still on my schedule. And I am just impressed, continue to be impressed with how involved the PTA and Mentor is, and how many parents that we get to come to meetings. So I appreciate that. And this group. We meet as presidents and myself and a few other administrators several times throughout the course of the year. They have been a great sounding board on different things that we want to talk about and try in the district, and we throw things out, so to speak, and they weigh in. So it's been a great piece for us to contribute to the success of our district. 2 things I can think of off the top of my head. Barricade safety devices was one of the things that we brought up to the PTA parent group, and then when we made the calendar change, that was also with input and advice and guidance from the PTA president, so I appreciate that a lot. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to call them up, mention their school and name, and give them a chance if they want to speak. They don't have to. How's that for pressure? If they want to say anything. The principals are here as well. I will not put them on the spot tonight. Several of them could not make it because there are conferences and several other things going on in the buildings. So I'm going to start with the high school. And I'm going to introduce Teresa Ackerman from Mentor High School.
All you do. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, you go right ahead.
I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I wanted to thank Mr. Wade. He's a big reason why we get people coming to our meetings. You give us a lot of information, and you're very supportive, so I appreciate everything you do for our PTSA. Thank you. Thank you.
From Shore Middle School, Patsy Hickson.
Hi, I just want to say the same. For my principal is awesome. Mr. Baker is the best principal, and for my husband and I, we're so thrilled that our son is in this district. It's awesome. We have an 8th grader at Shore, and we just think the district is the best one around. So thanks.
Going off script, which is kind of my theme of the evening, Patsy's husband, Eric, helps with our Science Olympiad team, and he's here too, so I just want to give him a shout out for that. From Ridge Middle School, Rose Kenny. Last year when we did this with our PTA presidents, I forgot somebody. So I am not going to forget tonight, and I'm glad she came back to give me another chance. From Memorial Middle School, Mary Jo Narici.
Thank you.
Oh, I have to say something because Mr. Dedziak will never let me hear the end of it. So I would totally like to thank Mr. Dedziak. He's an awesome principal as well, and as well as all the board at Memorial and all the parents. We have a great PTA at Memorial, so we're very proud of them. Thank you.
From Sterling Morton Elementary, Justine Gunvalson.
I'd like to say thank you to Mrs. Bergant, who's here tonight, who's our principal. And I personally really love it at Sterling Morton. I have 2 children there, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love the school and if we didn't have a great support system there too. Thank you very much.
Justine also has a baby at home, and if you remember, last year we started the Once a Card T-shirts, and so for her newborn, she brought him in. How old was he at that first PTA meeting he came to? 5 days old, and she actually got him a onesie and had it printed on it, hashtag Once a Card. So you might have seen that on a picture floating around. From Rice Elementary, we have 2 co-presidents, Susan Culp and Julie Johnson.
Thank you for your PTA hat.
I'm a new president, and I see that my co isn't here tonight, Julie. I'm Susan Culp, and I wanted to thank Mr. Miller because as a new president, I've never seen or experienced the collaboration and the environment that you've created for leadership and for opportunities for parents to really take an active role in their child's education. So thank you and the board for allowing us to do that. And my principal isn't here tonight, and she is completely amazing. Rose Rogers is just top drawer all the way and has done tremendous things for our kids. So thank you all for the opportunity.
From Orchard Hollow, Taryn Winnie.
I definitely was not planning on saying anything as well. And how do I follow that? I mean, I'm like, I hope I'm not next, but then I was. So, and I'm actually a first-year president as well, and it was my first year at Orchard Hollow, so last year. And so I do have to thank Karen Trunk for helping me along as I email her all the time, asking her, what about this, what about that, and all the wonderful people at my school. So, thanks.
From Lake Elementary, Christine Weiss.
Thank you.
Just real quick, I just want to say thank you to Jody. She's our new principal this year, and I think I've overwhelmed her just a little bit. We have a couple, vice president has stepped up a little bit, and even my husband. So I am now full-time worker, so I'm not at the school as much. So Jody has pretty much 3 presidents working with her, right? And she won't come up here with me to support me. So, anyways, thank you, Jody, for everything. Appreciate it.
From Hopkins Elementary, Amy Beskid.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank my principal, Chris Miley.
It's been a pleasure to get to know you and work with you. This is my last year of elementary school, finishing a decade, so it's bittersweet to move on. I will miss everyone and all of the elementary time. So look out, Mr. Duziak and Mr. Wade, because I'm coming your way. Thank you. And thank you to the board and to the whole team in the district for always taking the time to meet with us. I really appreciate the meetings.
From Garfield Elementary, Lori Reed.
I would just like to thank Janice Price, she's our principal at Garfield, for being just very amazing and supportive. And it is a privilege to be a part of Mentor and just the great school district. So thank you.
Thank you. From Fairfax Elementary, co-presidents Nikki Smith and Kim Crawford.
Please excuse Nikki tonight. She's at the band concert up at the high school. Have to be mom tonight, so she asked me if I'd come, and I'm like, okay, I'll come. I have 3 children that, one graduated last year from Mentor High and is attending the University of Wyoming and doing wonderful. And then I have a son who's 15 who's at the high school, he's a sophomore, and my daughter is in 5th grade at Fairfax. So it's my last year at Fairfax. I've been involved in PTAs for over 12 years since my oldest started kindergarten. I've been in Mentor for 7 years, and it's wonderful to work with such an amazing district. Everyone asks me where my kids go to school, and I tell them with honor, Mentor. And I tell them, move to Mentor, because they have an amazing program for kids. And people ask me moving in from other areas because they're looking at school districts. And I'm just so grateful we moved to Mentor, because when we moved here, we were looking at several different places, and my kids have thrived here. So thank you.
From Brentmore Elementary, Stephanie Lowe.
I'd like to thank the board, Mr. Miller, for everything that they've done for the school as a whole, the school district as a whole. Our fearless leader, Ms. Hutto, for taking charge over at Brentmore and leading the kids on a great adventure every year. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
From Bellflower Elementary, Courtney Kessler.
Hello. Ms. Hardy is busy with conferences tonight, but we've got a great thing going over at Bellflower. My oldest is a 1st grader, and he loves going to school, and I think that's all a parent can really ask for. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Okay, did I miss anybody? I do want to just give a quick special mention to the gentleman in the green shirt, who I can't remember your name, I'm sorry. John, he is a Rice PTA dad, correct? And he comes as the board liaison, so he comes to almost all of our meetings to report back to Rice about what's going on. So we do have fathers involved, and I just wanted to acknowledge that too. So thank you, John. At this time, Mr. President and members of the board, I've asked Mr. Lynch to present his monthly update on our Straight A grant initiatives.
Mr. Vice President, members of the board, Mr. Miller, Mr. Wilson, I want to thank you for the opportunity to keep you and the members of our community updated on the progress of the Straight A grant. If you recall, in my September presentation, we traveled up the road of Straight A using a program called Prezi. This month, I'd like to use Haiku Deck, which makes presentations simple, beautiful, and fun. This is a free online program that anyone can use, including our students. When working with the staff at Mentor High School, I continue to use the image of steps as I view our day-to-day, week-to-week, and month-to-month progress as small steps towards our larger goal. Tonight, I'd like to share with you a couple of these steps that we have taken over the last month. If you look at this model, this is where we started with at our PD Center just about a month and a half ago. A beautiful representation using cardboard.
Nice.
We are now at this stage of the PD Center. We have spent a significant amount of time this past month focusing on finalizing plans of our professional development center. The construction went out to bid yesterday, and the PD Center, and we will accept bids for the next 3 weeks, closing on November 3rd. Bids will be opened on that Monday at noon, and we hope to have a special board meeting on Friday, November 7th, for the board to review and approve plans for the PD Center. Mr. Miller will coordinate with your calendars to see, hopefully that will work for you. If not, we will make adjustments. With that timeline, we are planning to have a special groundbreaking ceremony before our next regular board meeting in November. So we've gone from the box to our beautiful representation on the screen. And they are already, this past month, they have spent some time testing the ground to make sure everything is ready to go. Our Learning Center renovations have begun, and we are continuing to spend a significant amount of time over the last month making decisions on finishes throughout the Learning Center. We are also finalizing furniture purchases. We are still on schedule to finish the renovations in early December, and we'll use the rest of the month to populate the space with furniture and other technologies that will make this a space that every one of our students, staff, and community members will want to be in. With regards to classrooms, I feel like this is a significant amount of time, and that's why I have the image up in front of you, where there is a lot of time on my mind spending trying to figure out how we are going to make this happen. An inventory of all of the 60 classrooms that are going to be renovated has been completed. We are currently planning to select one classroom as our test classroom and begin the renovation sometime in the month of November. We will use the information that is gained from this classroom to begin to formulate a specific timeline for the completion of the other 59 rooms. We have already begun to test drive some furniture that will be located in some of these classrooms. I want to tell you what I heard from some of the students in the first 10 minutes that I spent in this classroom after the furniture had arrived. These are specific quotes coming from students. Wow, these chairs are a lot more comfortable. Okay, this is cool. Ooh, I do like these. All right, I'm really excited. One student said, "We have rolly chairs." Oh yeah. And again, I'm not making up those expressions. Those were all students, high school students, making it in the first 5 to 10 minutes. 2 minutes later, after I stood there and listened, there was a knock on the outside wall. Miss Roediger, the teacher in this classroom, says, "See, everyone's clamoring to get in here." One student responds, "That's because we have rolly chairs." I believe that this excitement is just the beginning as we continue to move forward with the implementation of the many initiatives of the Straight A grant. As you can see in this picture, how the students just rearranged themselves so that they could make a larger work surface area to solve a specific problem that Ms. Roediger had presented. Over the last month, we have also spent a significant amount of time trying to make a selection for the devices that we are going to use at our high school. Our grant implementation team narrowed this down to 5 possible devices that fit our key objectives and our price point. We spent 2 days allowing the students and staff to evaluate and give feedback on these devices. From the over 750 student and staff evaluations that were completed, there were clearly 2 devices that stood out. Our grant implementation team followed up with both of these companies and provided them the opportunity to pitch their product and explain to us why theirs would be the best choice. The quotes came in, and the debate continued until we ended up with what we believe will be best for our students, which is the MacBook Air. Those devices have been purchased initially for our teachers, so we have purchased the initial 180 devices for our teachers, and we will follow up with purchases for our students in March, April, and May, so that they are ready for our students at the beginning of next school year. Again, the grant initially, we were only going to go with our 9th and 10th graders, but we were able to make it happen where we are going to be purchasing MacBook Airs for 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, and we will also be distributing a device to our seniors as well. We're working out a plan to make that happen. With regards to professional development, this is another one of those items that I wake up in the middle of the night having dreams about and taking up a lot of time. This, I believe, is the key to the success of this grant. We have had the opportunity, Mr. Wade and myself, to meet with the high school staff and to continue to take small steps forward in our understanding of blended learning. All of the staff members will have training this year on the integration of technology into their classrooms. Our hope was to identify 20 members of the teaching staff who would be willing to move a little bit faster up those steps and receive some additional training on the blended learning model. We are thrilled to have not 20, but 27 members of the staff who had volunteered to be part of this initial group. In the upcoming months, I look forward to sharing with the board further examples of the PD, the professional development that our staff will be receiving, supporting the initiatives of the grant. We're taking advantage of tomorrow afternoon and starting that training with 2 hours of Google training for all staff members at Mentor High School. Again, this is the key to the success of this grant. So what lies ahead? It's going to be just as busy of a month as this past one was. As we move ahead, we are going to be planning the groundbreaking for our Professional Development Center. The renovations will be ongoing with the Learning Center, with again the completion date being in early December. And our professional development schedule for the remainder of the year will be established over the next month. I look forward to sharing all of these details at our meeting in November. And at this time, I'll gladly take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch.
Thanks, Mr. Lynch. Moving on to my part of the agenda, Mr. President, members of the board, I'm recommending approval of the consulting service agreement with Patel for Kids for a strategic planning study for master development and services. These agreements are part of our straight A grant evaluation process.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Ms. Jesling?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. President and members of the board, we have several revised policies and 2 new policies on the agenda tonight. Since this is a first reading of the policies, no vote is necessary at this time. But I did want to bring it to your attention. Yep. Mr. President, members of the board, I'm recommending approval of agenda items C1 related to certified personnel and C2 through C5, all related to human resource matters.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Jesling?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Thank you. This concludes my part of the agenda.
Keep going. We have a Board of Education report and recommendations. Would you like me to read that?
I can explain that. Is that okay? Yep. Under business for the board to consider, I'm recommending, and so is the administration, Mr. Wilson, approval of a resolution to terminate the contract with the Lake County Educational Service Center effective June 30th of 2015, which is the soonest we can terminate that contract, and authorize the superintendent, myself, to enter into an agreement with the Cuyahoga County Educational Service Center. And I'll be glad to entertain any questions anybody has.
Questions, comments?
Nope.
We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Thank you.
A legislative report, it's just a brief one. I would like to remind people that this November's ballot will be a long one. This year, all 5 major statewide offices are up for election, as well as 99 Ohio House seats, 17 Ohio Senate seats, 16 congressional seats, and 7 State Board of Education seats. What's important to know that, I'm not sure if the correct word is complacency, but it's important to get out and vote because the ballot at the tail end are the judges, and the judges are very important. So please get out and vote and go all the way to the end of that ballot. So that's my report today. Thank you. Moving on, Chief Financial Officer's report and recommendations. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. It's recommended the financial statements for the month of September 2014 be accepted and placed on file for audit.
So moved. Second.
I would just indicate it's a relatively quiet month and budget performance is pretty much on target.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Please call the roll.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
It's recommended the Board of Education approve the investment transactions listed in Exhibit 7-B.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
It's recommended the Board of Education approve the interfund transfer listed in Exhibit 7-C.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
It's recommended the Board of Education approve the appropriation modifications listed in Exhibit 7-D.
So moved. Go ahead, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
And I have placed before you a additional supplemental appropriation I'm asking you to include in the resolution for approval tonight. As the board knows, we entered into an agreement to serve as the fiscal agent for the Cleveland Catholic Diocese. They've received a federal Title II-A grant through the state of Ohio, and we are hustling to get them up to speed, and we just received approval for this morning, and it would expedite them beginning to plan programming for the year if we could get approval. So I'm requesting that the board approve the supplemental appropriations presented in the 7-E and the supplemental appropriation for the Cleveland Catholic Diocese.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Recommended the Board of Education approve the student activity purpose, goals, and budgets presented in Exhibit 7-F.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Sorry. It's recommended the Board of Education approve payments listed in Exhibit 7-G.
So moved. Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
And before I ask for approval of the fiscal projections, I do have a presentation I'd like to present to the Board of Education. You have a copy before you, and it's also up on the screen. As you'll recall from our budget adopted last month, the theme this year is learning to do more with less, recognizing we continue to be most challenged by declining revenues for a variety of reasons. Oh, here we go. Thank you. There. The theme is centered around these recognitions. because of extremely low investment rates, we're losing about $2 million a year. That's an economic reality. The most significant key financial indicator, as we always talk about, is which year do we begin to spend more than we take in. That occurred in 2012, 2013, and you'll see a little later on how we're spending down our budget reserves. At the encouragement of the Citizens Financial Advisory Committee and the Board of Education, we continue to refine and improve both our budget model and our forecasting model with the goal of moving to a 98% or better accuracy rate. We're also recognizing instructional technology creates opportunities to replace some traditional instructional spending and will become less expensive over time. And finally, state education policy continues to have a bias away from traditional K-12 school districts to charter schools and vouchers for parents. Our 5 fiscal management beliefs are somewhat non-conventional in approach. Typically, as we've talked about before, most school districts will draw a series of circles and put students in the middle and strive to make reductions in spending as far away from students as possible. And while that's a very important consideration, the reality is when you get to the outer rings and start to look at savings opportunities, you're not talking about significant dollars. Our district, over a number of years, has evolved to these management beliefs that focus on our biggest spending categories: salaries, benefits, special education expenses, and facilities. And we focus our strategies on aggressively managing the budget in the big dollar areas, also being sensitive to the impact on teaching and learning, but knowing that's the opportunity to adjust to declining revenues. The addition on this slide to one you see every year is the last item. The straight A grant has been factored into the forecast, and part of this grant, which is a first ever for the state of Ohio, is we had to document and assure fiscal sustainability by having reductions in future years to our general operating budget. And you'll see a couple slides that incorporate that requirement. The additional refinements to the forecast model this year dealt on both the revenue side and the expense side. Those are some of the key areas that we tried to sharpen our pencil point on with the goal of moving there. Last year you saw this slide for the first time, and I would say we moved from conservative to just that second bar from the left, barely hitting moderately conservative. This year I'm hopeful that with these additional forecasting refinements we're beginning to move further to the right. I don't think we ever want to get to being aggressive or very aggressive, but we're trying to become more precise in our forecasting and think we have moved that needle a little bit to the right. Our major assumptions are that we do expect that the economy we're in is relatively stable and will remain so. We have adjusted downwards based on Federal Reserve predictions future years' inflation rates. Last year at this time we assumed 3.7%. We're now assuming a 3% rate in the out years, which is a positive for us. This year, for the first time, we changed our assumption on the new state budget, where we had anticipated a continued bias against the perceived wealthy suburban districts. We have removed an assumption of a 5% downward adjustment and have only adjusted our state subsidy for a change in student enrollment. We have retained the assumption we will see a continuation of the phase out of tangible personal property. That's probably the biggest non-change that we made. And as always, we assume that enrollment projections will track accurately. We've assumed no new unfunded mandates. We reduced from 10% to 8% our assumption on medical inflation based on this region of the country and more current data. We sharpened the pencil with energy costs, but did factor in the new energy costs from our professional development center that Mike has been talking about. And we assume that we will reduce spending in accordance with the assurances we made in the straight A grant. Our biggest challenge, and this is a slide that Matt and I use, and I know Tom uses as our legislative liaison, is our challenge goes back to 2004 when there were 4 state policy changes as it relates to taxation in the state of Ohio. The cumulative effect over the forecasted years is a loss of $56,687,000. What I talk about every time I meet a legislator is, don't give us more money, just leave us alone and quit taking money away, and we'll figure out how to be fine. But this is a huge challenge for us, and you'll see in the first column there, 2014-15, this current year, from those 4 tax policy changes, we're losing $7.5 million of revenue this year that traditionally had been collected. You'll see a lot of red numbers on this chart. The only time you see black numbers is when we had a significant collection of prior year delinquent taxes from property owners. But clearly, every year over year since I arrived in the district in 2004, we've had declining revenues, and that's the biggest challenge as we look to the out years. Student enrollment is starting to taper off. We updated for the 3rd time our student enrollment projections in 2013. The trend line's running pretty accurate. The actual loss of students is slightly less than had been predicted, but you'll see the assumption we've used there as we're nearing kind of a bottom point as far as declining enrollment. This chart has a new column in the center, the straight A grant, that fiscal sustainability piece. We had identified and assured the state we would reduce these positions, 11.7 full-time equivalent teaching positions between now and the end of the 2018-19 year. That's in addition to the enrollment adjustments that we have previously committed to a 33.8 full-time equivalent. So we will continue to see staffing adjustments, and we've been very pleased that every year since 2004 we've met the goal or exceeded the goal in adjusting, again being very sensitive to teaching and learning. We also recognize the tail end of the baby boomer generation is leaving our district, and that's somewhat accelerated, but not much now that we're at the tail end of it, by some significant changes in the state pension systems that encourages people to retire by June 30th of 2015. We did build in the corresponding savings and one-time costs from more than usual turnover. This year, we're estimating 29 people will retire by the end of the year. You may recall last year, I believe that number was 42. The reason we decreased it is last year we had more retirements than we expected. We see a little bit more of the baby boomers finishing cycling out of the workforce, and by 17-18 we're to what we believe is a normal turnover, recognizing our staff as we become younger on average. Staffing summaries here, and it's a little hard to read the chart, but this is a benchmark chart that you see every year. The blue row, and it's stacked in 3 categories: teachers/tutorers, although we're down to 3 tutorers now, support staff, and then administrators. The blue row indicates state averages, and that's a benchmark comparing us to all the other 612 districts in the state of Ohio. The green rows are federal numbers that compare us to the almost 14,000 public school districts in the United States. You will see that even with the past reductions in our faculty and the planned reductions, on average, we still have smaller class sizes than either the state or the federal averages. And in fact, if you go to 2014, 2015, and again, I know it's a difficult chart to read, our pupil-teacher ratio is 1 faculty member for every 14.65 students. The state average is 1 faculty member for every 18.47, and the federal average is 1 faculty member for every 16.3. So based on these 2 benchmarks, we still have an average smaller class size than either the federal or national model. On the there are no published benchmarks I can find for support staff, and we've actually seen a little bit of growth there. And that reason is, again, because of the special needs students and their unique circumstances, we do see some additional classroom assistance to help do the things that we're required to do and need to do to help those students be successful. At the administrative level, you'll see that for this year, we have one administrator for every 195.41 students. The state benchmark is one administrator for every 164.43, so we're slightly better staffed, more efficient, if you will. One administrator serves more students than the state benchmark. We're slightly under the national benchmark, which is one administrator for every 208.43. So I think even though we've seen significant reductions driven primarily by enrollment adjustments, we still are staffed at a very comfortable level compared to those benchmarks. As we talked about last year in the forecast and with the budget last month, we continue to change our internal budgeting priorities to have a bias towards blended learning. And you'll see in this chart here, by not increasing the bottom line to our budget at all or our forecast, we've been able to reallocate spending by reprioritizing, and we're committing this year just over $1 million to direct blended learning initiatives, and that grows to $1,260,000 in the last year of the forecast, again without going to an increase in the bottom line. That fiscal sustainability assurance we gave the state requires us to reduce spending over the life of these projections by $1,473,378, and you'll see the various categories. The biggest category are salary and benefits. There are some other major changes. The 1+ number, or 2+ numbers you see there, purchase services and capital outlay. We expect to increase spending in those categories, offset by reductions in the others. The spending's primarily for student devices every year for incoming 9th grade students going into the future years, and the necessary instructional software materials that go there. So this is straight out of the grant and the insurance we gave the state and has been rolled into our numbers. On the revenue page, when I showed you that, you saw almost all red numbers. This is the expense summary, year-over-year changes. The gray area is for the forecast period. And you'll see there's kind of 3 groupings of numbers. The crisis years, 2004-05, with a major reduction in 14%, and then the passage of the emergency levy, some restoration of programs. The recession years with the year-over-year spending of being less than 1% until the recession passed. And now we're predicting we're going to get back to normal. Nationally, year-over-year spending for K-12 education approaches 5% a year as an average increase. And you'll see we're underneath that federal benchmark, but expenses are growing at more than the recession year levels. The bottom line and the most important thing I think we want to celebrate is we are for the first time celebrating the notion that we predict a balanced budget for 2016-2017. That means that our emergency levy that we passed in August of 2004 has now been able to fund 13 years of fiscal budgets where we originally expected it to fund 4. This is a little more detailed chart of that bottom line. You'll see bottom right-hand corner, there's 2 red numbers. In 2017-2018, we're predicting a deficit of $29 million, and by carrying that deficit over to the next year, we're predicting a deficit of $65 million. So we have a very steep cliff. Even though we're celebrating balancing 16-17, we have a steep cliff that we're facing in the last 2 years of the forecast. And that leads back to the encouragement that the board's given me and our Citizens Financial Advisory Committee's given me to be more precise in our projection models and our formulas. You'll see that the year-over-year growth, as I mentioned, the recession years, post-recession years, the national benchmark I reviewed, and now we get to the budget performance where we've tried, and I think this past year we saw some improvement in my percentage of accuracy, both on the revenue projections and the expense projections. The average in my tenure with the district's been just over 96% in both areas. We are moving that model from conservative to moderately aggressive. I believe we're going to be very close to 98%, if not this year, next year. And that's significant because you'll see historically, every year we've collected more money than we budgeted. Every year we've spent less money than we budgeted. And that's an important factor when we look at that steep cliff in 17, 18, and 18, 19. So as we try to become more precise, I think that will clarify just how steep that cliff is. Every year we show you a couple key financial indicators. I talked briefly about the most significant, but this is also very important. Our district, unique in Ohio, in that we're one of a group of maybe 20% of districts experiencing significant enrollment decline. You'll see from 03-04, our student populations decreased 26% and our staffing's increased 30%. What I will tell you is when I arrived in the district, and I went back to the last couple of years before the crisis, you'll see in those early years we were losing 271 students, 330 students, 200, 381, and we were actually increasing staffing whilst the number of students were going down. And I think we've corrected that structural flaw, and this is a key financial indicator that structurally we're doing the right things with our biggest single spend on the expense side. That also relates to this key financial indicator. Conventional wisdom is if you spend more than 85% of your budget on salary and benefits, you have a structural defect in that you don't have enough money left to pay for fixed cost and overhead. You'll see we continue to move that needle down, and we're predicting that we'll be under 81% in the out years, which is a very comfortable place for us to be from a structural standpoint. The School Finance 101 chart, 2012-2013 was a hugely significant year for us. That's when current revenues became less than current spending. And again, this gets back to the improving the accuracy of revenue and expense forecasting. But you'll see that line begins to widen very quickly once we start what some people refer to as deficit spending when you look at current revenue to current expenses. The primary reason for that decline, and you'll see that green line's decline since we passed the levy in 2004 and paid back the state and got 100% of our revenues from our state subsidy, has been those tax policy changes I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. You'll see we flattened out that red line just to the left of the blue arrow. Those were the recession years where we just put the brakes on spending, waiting for the economy to get better. But if you look at the trend line, that red line before the crisis, the red line since the crisis, you'll see that they're upward trajectory. Our goal is to flatten the red line by becoming more precise in our projections and continue to aggressively manage expenses. We'll move the green line up a little bit, but it's not going to flatten out because of the tax policy changes. But this is the early indicator that we need to talk about strategies going forward. And in the actual forecast book, I've recommended that the Board of Education convene in December for a board work session to begin to talk about what's our future strategies for the beginning and continuing of deficit spending in the district. Deficit, again, meaning we're spending more than we take in a year. The reason it's not a deficit that a lot of people think is this slide in the bold row near the bottom. We knew this day was coming. The way school funding works in Ohio, revenues basically stay flat, or in our case decline because of tax policy changes. and expenses go up because of inflation in one form or another. In the first half of a levy cycle in any school district, wise fiscal management would say you build your cash reserves for the last years of a levy cycle so that the funds are available as you begin the deficit spend. And in fact, that's what we're doing. In 2012-13, we withdrew just over $2 million from our cash reserves. Last year, we withdrew over $3 million. This year, if I were 100% accurate, and hopefully we're going to over-collect and underspend a little bit, but nonetheless, I'm predicting we're going to withdraw $8.4 million from our reserves. The next year, $16.4 million. In 16-17, even though it's a balanced budget, that's because we're withdrawing $22.6 million, and that leaves only $742,000 available for cash reserves. And you'll see in 17-18, we expect to take in $85 million and spend $114 million. And the last year, take in $84 million, spend $120 million. So even if I'm 100% accurate, there's going to be a huge gap between current revenue and current expenses. And I think this is what we will focus on when we get together in December about what strategies are best for dealing with this circumstance. As in the past, the projections were presented, and we have much more detailed discussions, and the Finance Committee is a wonderful group of business community members that are very diligent in preparing for the meeting and bringing their questions. And the consensus of the committee, again, this year was that the Board of Education accept the fiscal projection and approve them as presented. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. The technology coaches, where were they included? Are they included as a regular teacher on the staff and in the per pupil numbers?
Yes.
Do they see students? Or, I mean, are they?
The state formula for pupil-teacher ratios are taking the certified teachers, and they do the same thing. I still call them librarians, so forgive me, Matt, whatever we call those wonderful folks now. Nurses, librarians, guidance counselors are serving students, instructional coaches indirectly, much more so than those other three classifications, but they're all included in the state's calculation. So for benchmarking purposes, I tried to replicate the people they recognize.
Okay. I just had a question, Mr. Wilson. Plus, thank you so much for all the work you did to tweak your process to get us closer to that 98% that the Citizens Financial Advisory Committee recommended. How many retirements do we know so far? I think we've got, what,
As of today,
15. So about halfway toward what we are anticipating. And the other question I had was, could you talk a little bit about how special ed is at 1.5 the rate of inflation, why that occurs?
For reasons I can't explain other than since 1974, when Public Law 94-142 was enacted requiring public schools to provide services and the supplemental services disabled students needed, the inflation rate has always been greater, whether it's the tuition rate when we decide it's best for a student to place them outside the district, whether it's some of the companion services we have to contract for to provide those students with special needs and their unique circumstances. It's just been my experience that the cost structure is one that sees more rapid increases than those things that we can do. And I can't explain why. I just have observed that has always been pretty true.
Thank you.
Mr. Shaw, you have a question?
Thank you.
But
Well done,
one
Dan.
last question. Student enrollment, we lose students to e-schools.
Yes.
We get, the funding for our students coming from the state is less than other school districts in the area. How much do we lose when a student leaves here and goes to an e-school? The whole thing?
Yeah, when I talk about a funding bias, there's a 23-step mathematical formula to calculate the per pupil amount any traditional K-12 school district receives. The beginning point of that, and the thing the legislature funds when they have discussions on how much to fund for traditional K-schools 12, is the base cost per pupil amount. This year is $5,735. That's in the first step of those 23 steps. I kind of go to the bottom line. How much money we get divided by how many students we have. We get on average less than $2,000 a student. If I just take total state subsidy divided by number of students. What the state deducts from us every time someone goes to an e-school is that $5,735.
Now, how much travels with that student to the e-school, Mr. Olson?
That entire amount.
$5,735.
Yes.
To a school that is for profit? Am I correct in that?
And
They're not non-profits, correct?
Well, the owner of the e-schools oftentimes are for-profit corporation. There are
Which
some
means
that
they
are,
can distribute their profits
yes,
to their
yes.
owners.
The
and
typical
board.
structure is in Ohio, you have to have a sponsor to be approved by the State Department of Education to operate an e-school. The sponsor is, if you will, the parent company. Oftentimes, they will provide the space for whatever on-site presence is needed to operate the school and charge rent for that at space they already have. They charge a management fee to operate the school. So if it's a for-profit parent company, more and more data is becoming available that here in Ohio, unfortunately, we're leading in an area that we don't want to lead in, where more dollars per pupil go to the parent company that more often than not is a for-profit company than to the students for direct teaching and learning. And
So
in the meantime, they
brick and mortar schools like ours get less money for a student enrolled in our schools than an e-school, correct? Am I?
That's absolutely correct. In fact, I shared with the board a chart that through last year, we had 150 students, most of them were in an e-school, and we had another 40 students that received vouchers that the state provides. We were deducted $1,583,000 from our state subsidy for 196 students. That averaged over $7,000 a student because the voucher that are provided for special needs students can be as much as $22,000.
Is it the same for charter schools as it is for e-schools?
Yes. E-schools are a
And we
type of
don't-
charter school.
Okay.
And are the e-schools, Dan, work under the same mandates as a school district such as ours, as far as accepting students?
No. No, they can be selective.
And often, if I can chime in on that one, oftentimes those students will spend some time at a charter and then come back to us, and the quality of education that they were receiving is nowhere near it is for us, and those kids are at a deficit when they come back to us.
They're required by the same requirements like OGT tests, and are they or
No.
are they not?
No.
That's what I thought.
The other issue, that was something that impacted our third grade reading guarantee this year. So, something that's certainly on our radar.
So if I'm hearing all this correctly, public schools are put at a disadvantage due to policy decisions above ours when it comes to operating e-schools and charter schools. Yet they expect us to still manage.
Correct. And they're not playing by the same rules.
November 4th is coming, folks.
All right. If there's no other questions, I would ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Mr. Olson?
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
And that completes my items for this evening.
Do we have any new unfinished business? I'm sorry, unfinished business? Do we? New action. None? New business?
I've got one. You've probably noticed 3 young men in uniform tonight. I'm going to ask if they'll come up and stand right here for me. 4, I'm sorry, 4. I'm missing, oh, okay. 4 young men, 3 of them in uniform. Just stand up right here for me, okay? And they're working on a merit badge tonight, so they had to come to a board meeting as Cub Scouts, and, oh, I like the shirt. Okay, you're good. So you guys have been fantastic, waiting very patiently through our board meeting, and this is probably going to be our highlight, quite honestly. No offense, moms, or Mr. Wilson. So it's not just them being here and watching a board meeting. They have to take an active participation. What I'm going to ask them to do, and I didn't tell them this, so I hope it's okay. I'm going to turn the microphone around to them that I have, and I'm going to just ask you to tell us what your name is, what grade you're in, and what school you go to. Okay? Can you guys do that? All right, we're going to start with the redhead.
My name is Nathan Hoffman. I'm 9. I'm in 4th grade, and Rice Elementary.
I'm Max Culp. I'm 4. I'm 9. And this is Nathan.
What school?
Rice.
All right, good job. All right. Next.
I'm Connor Altizer. I am in 4th grade. I go to Rice Elementary.
I am Tyler Stanzielli. I'm 9. I'm 4th grade, and I go to Lake Elementary.
All right, good job. Okay, and as part of their meeting, they have to ask a question, and I think Connor's going to be the spokesperson for the group, and then I'll try to respond, right? Okay.
We were wondering, what is the benefit of going to school? I think I already have an idea, but I just want you guys to verify it.
First of all, that's an excellent question. Second, I really like how you qualified your question. And I'll answer that in hopefully a short frame. So just so I understand, what you are asking me or asking us is, why should you stay in school? Pretty much? What is the benefit from school? So thank you for cleaning that up for me. So the benefit to being in school and staying in school is a couple of reasons. One is, you saw some of that tonight. You saw a couple of the high school kids that we were recognizing for their academic achievement, how high they scored, how much knowledge they were getting. And that's not something you can stop at 4th grade with, right? You have to go to school so you get a little bit more knowledge. Our teachers work very hard with you so that you can be ready to, once you graduate from Mentor, your education doesn't stop. We either want you to do a couple things. We want you to get a really, really good job, something that you're interested in doing, or we want you going to college so you can learn more about what you want to do. Because we want you guys to do things like cure cancer, create great places where kids want to be. We want you to help us be a more productive and better society, because we've only done so much, but we need to encourage you to take us on a higher level.
Here's what my answer is.
It's not the same?
It's a big shorter.
Okay, go ahead.
My answer to it was so you can get into so that lots of great high schools would want you, and you could get a lot of good jobs.
There you go. There you go. That's a great answer. I like his answer.
Not only is it easier,
Right. Is there anything else you guys need to ask? Thank you guys very much. Thank you for your patience, okay? We enjoyed having you. We're almost done. If you guys can just stick around, I got something for you before you go, okay? So we're almost finished.
That's it. We're going to go into executive session to personnel, discussion on personnel. We will be coming back, but there will be no vote, so there'll be no need to wait for us to come back. So,
Need a motion?
need a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
No, back to